Good morning, everyone, or good evening if you are in Asia or Europe. This is a special session because we got a lot of questions on Facebook and then elsewhere as well. So the idea here is that we'll address those questions first, and then if we have time, so we planned it for about 45 minutes. If we have time, then we will go over the other questions that you may have. All right, so let me quickly go over some introductions. My name is Pavan Khera. You may have seen me in other YouTube videos with USMLE Sarthi, and I'm an adjunct at Carnegie Mellon University. So I'll quickly go over the or go around the virtual table. So Rahul, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Rahul Kumala. I'm a gastroenterologist here in Arizona at Mayo. I hope that you'll find this session helpful, so feel free to ask questions. So, good. George?
Hello, my name is George, and I am happy to be here today, and I've matched into the University of Arkansas in diagnostic radiology. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
So George, I think your desktop or laptop is, the speakers are on, I think. There's echo coming out.
Yeah.
And I do see Lalit has also joined. So Lalit, are you there? You can activate your video whenever you're ready and introduce yourself. All right, so very quickly, we did get some questions on, who we are, what we do, and how can we help. So I'll quickly go over those questions first. For those of you who don't know about us, we help you with every aspect of the residency match other than the exam. So we help you with some externships, USCE. We obviously help you with the IRAD application, personal statement, those kind of things, program selection, communication, interview preparation is big, and the post-interview communication. So pretty much everything after the USMLE exam is our forte. And in terms of, we got some of the questions on, do you help in rotation? So yes, we do. We actually work with some physicians and hospitals. You can look it up on our website. The other question was, can you help us with the university programs? And the answer is no. Your best bet continues to be reaching out directly to university programs. They have a different procedure, etc. So reach out to them directly. The other question was, when is the best time to join you guys? And, the sooner you join, the better it is. As the season, now we are only 4 months away. So if you join us sooner, then we can work with you in a much better way. We have time, we can guide you and advise you. So if you join us in August, there is very little in terms of the CV and PS we can do. But then, of course, we can help you with the interview preparation. So how does it all work? We do group classes. We have a fairly robust, curriculum, so about 15 to 20 separate classes. We have physician mentors. So if you are in one of those plans, platinum plans, you're assigned physician mentors that will walk you through every step of this journey from now until the day you match. And we have one-on-one mock interviews as well. Then we also run a community. It's a closed group of our students only on Telegram and WhatsApp. And so guidance is provided over those groups also. So as I said, we have a fairly diverse panel. You can look it up on our website. We have former AMGs, IMGs, we have journalists. So to help you with the PS and CV, residents, attendings. And over the past 4 years, we have helped about 700 students. We have a very high match rate. We have now started to get DO students also and a lot of Caribbean students. All this is available on our website, and you should go and visit. About 24 countries our students come from. And obviously we get a range of applicants in terms of their profile. Okay, so here's our website, here's our contact information. So, you can look us up or get in touch. Now, before I start the broader questions, I do want to point you to the YouTube channel. We have over 80 videos. So a lot of these questions, almost all of these webinars will be there. So you should look it up. It answers many of the questions that you may have. So subscribe to that. Just type USMLE Sarthi on YouTube and you will hit our channel. And then here's another blog and FAQ site that we are, now we have launched to help all the IMG applicants. It's a free site. It'll have all the questions. You can submit the questions. You can respond to them if you know the answers. We manage it. There are blogs. So we hope that this is the one-stop kind of shop for all your questions and answers. We manage it actively, so we kind of curate the responses as well. So do look it up, and then if you have questions, etc., you can post it there as well. So before we proceed further, I know Lalit has joined. So Lalit, do you want to introduce?
Yeah, sure, Pawan. Hey guys, my name is Vemreddy Lalit, and I've graduated from Zaporozhye State Medical University, Ukraine in 2013, and I matched this year into internal medicine at Rosalind Franklin University of Medicine and Science. So this is a little bit about my profile. So, yeah.
All right, so how we are going to do this is we will go over the questions first that we got on Facebook and, while you were registering, and then I'll just coordinate and go around the panel here. So the first question, and maybe George and Rahul, you can answer. It's a very common question we get, home country residency, and how does it give, advantages to the applicant? So maybe Rahul, you can start, and then George, you can chip in.
Okay, everybody can hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. So home country residency is always a positive. It is especially helpful for certain specialties like maybe pathology, or if you're going for OBGYN, or especially if you're going for something very competitive like anesthesia. Now, so in those instances, I think people look for a home country residency to see that you have some of the basic skills and you'll be able to adjust and adapt to the residency here. I think radiology also can be quite helpful. Now, assuming that you have done a home country residency, let's say in surgery or something else, but now you want to change tracks. So if you do your home country residency in a certain specialty and you want to do the same specialty here, then it's a no-brainer. It can be very helpful. If you want to change tracks, I still think it can be helpful. You just have to really explain in your personal statement and your CV of exactly what the skills you learned in your home country residency and how you're going to apply that to your residency here, and also why you're making the shift. So for example, you did OB in back home, and now you want to go into internal medicine. That's obviously a big shift. So you really want to be able to explain the why and what that residency is, how that residency is going to help you in your residency here.
Okay. George, maybe a related question, that we got. There was one question, 250s and home country residency and publication, can they compensate for a CS attempt?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So remember that a CS attempt will pull you down so hard, but on the other hand, there are so many ways to improve after a CS attempt. So as Dr. Pannala said, the best way of showing, so two things. One, it could show commitment. The home country residency is very helpful in showing commitment. And second, it can also help show the program that you've had significant experience in that area. So you've had that background knowledge that they don't have to build up. So these are the two things that that are brought in by home country residency. And of course, high scores. With the help of high scores, it can actually, sometimes it can help overcome the attempt. But there's so many things that that need to be taken in consideration. For example, home country residency plus high scores plus publications, I think they would be able to overcome these attempts. Yeah, we've had people in our own team who have had high scores in step 1 and step 2 with the home country residency match into even non-associated specialties here in the U.S. Someone with an OB-GYN residency matching into internal medicine, someone with a neurology residency in home country matching into radiology. So it's very well possible. Even people with red flags, it's very well possible with the right amount of a combination of like overcompensation in a way, just put it.
Okay. So George, continuing with you, I got another question, which is, applying to multiple specialties in the same hospital or the university. So this person wants to know, for example, pediatrics and child neurology. But we get, the same question, IM and FM in the same hospital. So what are your views on that, the multiple specialties in the same hospital?
This is a very, I think we have a lot of split views on this. And speaking firsthand, because I've actually done this. And so it depends on so many things. So for example, if it's pediatrics and pediatric neurology, it might not deliver the essence of you being committed to pediatric neurology. All advanced specialties, I mean, I'm sure the other specialties too, but advanced specialties, as much as I've seen, they look for commitment more than the other specialties. So if the person applies to both pediatrics and pediatric neurology in the same hospital, it is unlikely, it is very less likely that the two program coordinators might communicate, but there is no reason why they shouldn't, So there is a chance that both programs might be notified that the same student is applying, and it is up to the discretion of the program coordinator, director, or the residency selection committee to decide whether the applicant is worth calling or interviewing, or even if they decide, we don't know how they're going to rank. So it's a difficult situation, and especially if it is a program which is small, like a hospital which is small, where the program coordinators are more tightly knit, then there is a much higher chance that information gets passed between or interdepartmental. That's what I feel. And that's actually something that I've actually seen in the place that I work. So for example, I had applied to neurology and radiology. So both, I had interviewed at a same program for both of these specialties, like 3 months apart. And both my programs were aware that I was interviewing at either program. But in my personal statement, I'd mentioned that I am interested in a particular fellowship which could be reached through either of the specialties, and that's how I explained it. So that is an exception, and if you have such strong reasons, go for it, but otherwise I would not say it just because you want to increase your chances. That is not the way to increase your chances. This is my personal conviction.
Okay, thank you. So Lalit, going to you, there's a question on DO and MD merger. How does that impact IMG? So probably I'll take you on this first and then move to Rahul. So what have you researched on this? What is your opinion on this merger?
So I've been looking at this for quite some time, because even though I was confident that I would match, but I still had to look for other options. So the thing is, they are actually merging the whole system into under the ACGME. So we don't know the exact changes that are going to happen, but I feel that the IMGs will have more chance of I wouldn't say more chance, but they'll have a little bit edge over the DO candidates because they would be applying to even the DO programs. But at the same token, as DO candidates are more into family medicine residency, so it might get a bit difficult for the MD applicants to get into family medicine residency, especially the IMGs, because for the past few years we have been seeing that the family medicine residency programs need more and more AMGs for people with green cards. So that's how I feel like this whole DO and MD merger will impact the matching rate of IMG applicants. But at the same time, I feel we cannot exactly predict what's going to happen. So this is my view on the DO and MD merger. So I would like to listen to Dr. Pannala's view on this.
Yeah, no, I think you said it right. Just to add to that, I think the way it's going to work, and I agree with Lalit that it remains to be seen. I think family medicine is going to be the biggest challenge. If somebody is really interested in family medicine, that's going to affect them the most. Obviously, there's going to be the top 5% of the DO class that are going to then focus on other specialties, and some into internal medicine, some into other things, especially for things like radiology, anesthesia, things like that. A lot of DOs. The top 5 to 10% of the class will be competitive for that. The rest of the class, last time I looked at this data, I think the majority of the DO classes go into family medicine. Now, I think that's going to settle down to where certain programs have connections with the DO programs, and it sort of peaks that way. But all of these in the big picture tend to even out over time. So the first 1 or 2 years would be a little bumpy in a sense. But I think there is also a lot of, the MD programs and the MD residencies, unless they have DO faculty on there, they don't really have that connection with the DO programs. So that, I think, though, it'll take some time for those connections to establish. So it really will depend at a particular program on if there are certain faculty who are DO faculty and who sort of attract the DO students. So I think it will remain to be seen. I think the primary thing is going to be in family medicine, at least for the first few years. I think family medicine might be more competitive. So I would say if you're solely focused on family medicine, then as a true foreign graduate requiring a visa and all that, that might be a bit challenging. You might have to work extra hard to show your commitment to family medicine.
Yeah. All right, now let's move on to some very specific questions. So Rahul, maybe I'll stick with you on this and then move to Lalit. Generic versus personalized LORs. What is the difference between a generic LOR and a strong LOR? That's the general question.
Yeah, so the first part of that is understanding the importance of a letter of recommendation. The letter of recommendation is probably one of the most important components of your application. Most experienced interviewers, most experienced people will take a quick look at your profile, maybe the scores or which college you went to, and then immediately look at your letter. Because the person writing the letter has an opportunity to either praise you or, sort of ding you, and it really tells us a lot. Now, a quote-unquote generic letter is something that really doesn't reflect, like one could change the name at the top and it could apply to anyone, right? So, but a specific letter is which reflects a relationship that you have with the letter writer. You've worked with him or her. They quote very specific examples of what you've done. They quote specific outcomes. This person did research with me for 6 months. In those 6 months, he or she had 3 abstracts, had 2 had 2 papers, did this, this, and this. So it has a clear outcome. It has a clear, and a good letter also talks about what your interpersonal skills are, what your communication skills are, what your fit is going to be to a residency, and if how they would actually rate you as a resident if they had a residency program or would take you as a resident. Now, the one thing I will say is when you do get letters, obviously the letter itself, while it's very critical to the U.S. sort of application process, if you're coming from an outside country, things like that, where they're primarily based on exams and letters are not a big factor, and you're requesting a letter from one of your faculty, they may or may not know or understand what a good letter of recommendation is. So you may want to have that communication with the faculty and say, these are the things I've done. Maybe give them bullet points of all the things you've done with them, and maybe help them to sort of focus the letter very well.
Yeah. Lalit, do you have to add anything from your personal experience?
I think Dr. Pannala summed it up pretty well. The only thing I would like to add is, so in a strong LOR, you need to have like different components, not just mentioning your clinical skills or how you are, how strong you are medically, but it should more emphasize more on how you are with the patients and actually give us. It's wonderful if they could give a specific example, and I feel that helped me a lot this year. So that's the only thing I would add to whatever Dr. Pannala said.
Okay. Let's take another question, and George, maybe you can chip in. What happens if I apply late? And specifically, I think someone asked if I apply on 10th October, how does it impact?
Okay, so let me give you an example. I had put this on the USMLE FAQs page too. I had attended an interview in November in an internal medicine residency program, and the program director was a friend of mine. She told me that on September 15th, the day ERA's postbox opened, they got 3,500 applications. The day it opened, okay? Now, every single day that passed by, they got 500 new applications. So think about this. So September 16th, they got 4,000 applications. 17, now 4,500. Now this keeps going on. Obviously, it would taper down to the end. But now at the end of the day, when they interviewed me in November, they said that we haven't even gone through all our applications. Why? Because we don't have time. So they might go through all the 3,500 applications that they've gotten on September 15th, but someone who applies on October 10th in such a program, it would be difficult for them to notice. It's not impossible, but it would be difficult for them to notice. So there are ways to make them notice. It would be to personally email them or contact them and say that you applied now, and then you express your strong interest in the program. It is it's not completely known how useful that is, because it depends on program to program. Some programs just forbid, they don't allow any type of communication. Some are open to it. They might accept your call, but they still won't do anything. But it's always worth a try to, if worst case scenario, you have to apply late on such a time like October 10th, then call and pester the program, go after the program so that they may see your application. But if ever you have a choice, October 10th is not the best time to submit your application. Always before September 15th, any time between September 10th to September 15th would all be time-stamped as the same day, same time. So you're not below or above anyone, you're at the same timestamp. Anytime after that, you're below at least thousands of applications below. So you have to think about the difficulty, we're all humans. Think about the actual humanistic and mechanical difficulty to go through that many applications and why someone would have hesitancy to go through an application 1 month later.
Yep. Okay. Good. So now switching gears again, maybe Lalit, you can answer this. On the visa, J1 versus H1B, I know, more of it is determined by the programs where you interview and all, but give us some pros and cons of this J1 for residency.
Yeah, this comes up a lot. Like even the students that come for observership here at Mayo do ask me a lot about this question. So when it comes to visa preferences, it is totally up to you, like which one you want to choose, because let me explain this, because it totally depends on what you want to do next. For example, let's take a specific scenario where if you want to do a hospitalist later on, like after your residency, then yeah, you don't have to, especially if if the program that you match sponsors a H1B, then I would prefer to take a H1B because you wouldn't have to go through the whole home country waiver and all that, all those specifics. But again, if you want something like a competitive fellowship, I would advise you to get a J1 because nowadays programs are more aware of these visa situations, and as everyone knows, H1B is only for a time period of 6 years. So once you actually cross that time period, then they have to sponsor you a H1B again, and they have to go through the whole hassle, which the programs are not ready to take. So I would say if you are applying for a competitive fellowship, then yes, you should go for it's better to go for a J1. But again, as I said, it's totally dependent on your preferences, like what you want to do next. And let's talk about cons. So in terms of H1B, as I said, you might have a little bit less chance of matching into a competitive fellowship like cardio or gastro. But in terms of J1, obviously you have the two-year home country residency, which is, I know it's a bit tricky and a little bit hard to find waiver jobs, but I think you can still manage to find a waiver job. So these are the main pros and cons that you need to consider when you actually go for a visa when you match.
Okay, thank you. All right, now coming to some parts of the personal statement. So Rahul, maybe this is for you. How much details about my U.S. clinical experience should I put in the personal statement?
Yeah, so
what level
that's
of
an
detail?
Important question where you understand the difference between the personal statement and your CV. So the personal statement is not meant to be, sort of, again, a recounting of all your U.S. clinical experience. Remember, the personal statement is one page. That's about 700 words, and every word in that is precious, so you don't want to waste it. What people are looking for is the big picture. So instead of going through and listing all, I did observership for 2 months at this hospital and an externship at 3 months, you want to give a more big picture view and to say, overall, I've had 6 months of U.S. clinical experience in a wide variety of settings. This has helped me to gain some critical skills, which will, enable me to hit the ground running in a residency. I'm very comfortable with the U.S. healthcare system. I'm comfortable interacting with all the other specialties, things like that. So that's the message you want to send. Or if you have had some specific examples of specific experiences, or you have rotated at a really very prestigious university or hospital and you've got some specific experiences, then I think it's okay to mention it briefly. But don't waste too much time in your personal statement going into the specifics of all your rotations.
Okay. George, maybe a related question, and I think this relates to also the non-ERAS CV, because the question is, should I mention my scores on the CV? But obviously in the ERAS CV, you don't mention your scores. So on the non-ERAS CV, when they're looking for, say, research or rotations, should they mention their scores?
Actually, that's a great question. So recently I've been getting applications from people who are seeking research positions here. So the thing is, most of these applications have their USMLE scores on them, like their regular CVs have their USMLE scores on them. So I think it doesn't harm in any way, because, so I always tell the person who applies for research to always be upfront about what their goals are. So if you are applying to research, you tell when you apply for research, you always tell them that our goal is a residency in the United States. That is our end goal. Our goal is not to be, I mean, at least for most of the people, goal is not to be a physician scientist or just a scientist or even not do residency. So at the end of the day, our goal is to get into residency. So if we put USMLE scores, it doesn't harm, and not putting it there also doesn't harm. But I've seen a couple of research mentors and PIs have asked students for their USMLE scores. So this is not usually used as a screening technique. It's just to see if, I think it is their way of objectively seeing if the student has completed the exams and, if they can commit their time for research experience. So that is my take on this, and from what I've seen. And there was another question about whether we should put the scores in the personal statement. Absolutely not.
Okay, good. Then Lalit, maybe moving on to you, and this is again very common question. We have only one CV, certified CV, ERAS CV, applying to multiple specialties. So I think the question was mostly on med-peds. So IM peds, where should I focus if I have to apply to med peds, IM or peds? But I think the question is much broader. With the same CV, how do you apply to multiple specialties? What should the focus be?
1 second. So first of all, when applying to multiple specialties, especially if they are like very unrelated, for example, let's say medicine and pediatrics. For pediatrics, you need to show a very, dedicated CV for them to actually consider you. But as I said, you cannot make a single CV and say, hey, this is my CV, and you cannot send it to each and every program, because obviously that will hinder your choices, chance of getting, an interview. But when it comes to med-peds, I can take an example, because I went through the same situation as I applied to med-peds too. So what I would suggest is for med-peds, the most important thing is obviously the scores. And later on, like moving on after the scores, then you need USCE. So one question was, what if I only have IM USCE and I don't have any PEDS USCE, and PEDS letter is from home country? So I feel that is not actually showing a dedicated interest towards the med-peds, because they strongly require someone who is like very oriented towards family practice, like more as a outpatient service, and they need someone with IM LORs and PED LORs. But it's not like you cannot apply with just one PEDS home country LOR. You can still apply, but the chances of you getting an interview is very less, because always remember the combined programs are very competitive, even for AMG. So you need both. You need IM USC and at the same time PEDS USC, and it would be great if you could actually get a med-peds USC in a hospital like teaching hospital or any university hospital, because obviously that would actually mention your interest in both medicine and pediatrics. So I went through the same situation, and as I said, I got a MedPeds LOR on my application, which actually helped me to get a, interview. So I would suggest you to, try to get PEDS USC doing, not just focus on IM and just apply for MedPeds with IM LORs. That's not going to help you. And last thing I want to talk about is personal statement. They scrutinize the personal statement so much that, you have to be very careful with your wording. You need to be very specific with the examples, like why you want to do MedPeds. And this, I don't know who asked this question, but one person asked in the questions that, what if we want to do cardiology fellowship? Actually, that's like, I wouldn't say negative sign, but that's like, that's going to hinder your chances of matching, because as I said, MedPeds is more of a primary care oriented specialty. I mean, it's not like you cannot go to, fellowships. You can still do that, but they would prefer someone who is, more focused on actually taking care of medicine and pediatrics as a primary care specialist. So that's what I would say.
Okay. So let me just ask you another question before I move to other panelists. And this is, again, very common. Preparing for step 3 versus getting more USCE. Where do I balance? What should I do if I have, time constraints? What should I focus on?
I would say it depends on the CV. For example, let's take a scenario where, let's say I got 6 months or 7 months of like solid USC, where you did hands-on experience and you did like a medical student instead of, observership. Then I would suggest you to, keep more focus on things like step 3. And at the same time, if you could, it's better to continue the, doing the, United States clinical experience. But if that's not the case, then as I already answered this question in the message in the chat, good scores and USC always takes the precedence before research or step 3. So if you don't have those, focus more on those, getting, becoming a strong applicant, getting a strong LOR specific to you. And then if you already have those on your application, then try to, it's like filling the holes. You just have to, be careful, assess your own application, and you just have to make sure that you have everything on your CV. So if you already have good number of USC, then it makes sense to get more, but at the same time, you can do more by, doing finishing off step 3 and participating in research later on. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, okay. Last few questions, and maybe Rahul, going back to you, and then George. What should I do after submitting the application? How do I spend my time productively post September 15th? That's the common question.
It's a very good question, and I think that time is usually neglected by students, but it can be very, very critical, because remember, you submit in September, but you're interviewing all the way probably through February. So that's a chunk of time that you really want to utilize. And how best to utilize it really depends on your specific situation. I would say that, assuming you haven't taken step 3, you could consider doing step 3, getting step 3 out of the way. That would be number 1. Number 2 is, when you go for an interview, one of the first questions is, so what are you doing now? And so you need to have an answer to that. And it also provides you an opportunity to, talk about yourself. So if you're doing a clinical rotation, or especially if you're doing research, then you can really use that opportunity to say, I'm doing research here, these are the projects I'm, working on, things like that. So remember, even from September, by the time you join residency, it's next July, so you have a huge chunk of time there. So make good use of that time. But when you join in research, when you join anywhere in clinical rotation, things like that, make sure you tell them that this is interview season. You're going to, take some time off to interview. So manage that carefully, because otherwise they will be upset that you've joined and you're suddenly sort of gone here and gone there and things like that. But don't just sort of not do anything. Whatever it is that you feel that any one of these three options, get step 3 out of the way, do more clinical rotations, or get involved in research, that can only help you during your interviews and eventually in your residency.
Yes, thank you. George, you can add to this.
Yeah, I was thinking of adding on to this, but I think Dr. Pannala is he's explained it all. It's neglected by a lot of medical graduates, a lot of international medical graduates. They consider it to just be an interview season, and then when during the interview they're asked, what are you doing? No answer, just attending interviews. That is not the best answer to give for interviews. So either research, so if you have dedicated research position lined up, then great. That'd be the best, that'd be a great answer. And then I would add, if you're studying for step 3, during that time, and if you're here in the United States, obviously you'll be here in the United States, it's always good to try to find a volunteer position too. Like you might find a volunteer position for 1 or 2 days a week, and that is something that you can do during that time, so you have something to talk about during your interview. So what are you doing now? I'm doing my volunteering and preparing for my step 3 so that I may give it before or next month or something like that, So I feel like that is a great point, because even for one of my interviews, one of the interviewers asked me only about my volunteer experiences. So you never know how the interview is going to go. It's always good that we provide fodder for them to ask us. And if we have nothing to ask us, if we don't provide them anything, then, it might not go the way we want it to. So it's always good that we come in with things that we want them to ask us about. So that includes volunteer experience or studying for USMLE Step 3 or whatever. Using that time productively in such a way that you can actually tell it. Yeah.
Okay, I think we'll take last 2 questions, which are actually very important, one for you, George, and one for Lalit. So George, to you, the question is, year of graduation, and especially I think the question was neurology, I'm 5 years out, will I be filtered out? But I want a broader question, how strong is this year of graduation filter as you are applying to the residency programs? And maybe Lalit, then to you is the same about the scores. I am 5 points below the listed score for step 1 in a program. Should I apply or not apply? So George, maybe you first in terms of the year of graduation and how strong of a filter is that?
Okay. So before this, there's a related question which talks about where do we get this information about year of graduation? Okay, yeah. This information is either from the website, or it's from FRIDA or wherever. So this information is usually from what I've seen last year and the years before, it's a very soft filter. Okay, by very soft filter I mean it is not very strict in filtering out candidates. And this is especially important in people who are applying, in candidates who are applying to advanced specialties like neurology, radiology, ophthalmology, anesthesia, especially in these people, and people who are applying with a home country residency. So in them, especially the year of graduation filters is overlooked because of the other experiences. So coming to the actual question, wait, let me go back. So when do we know if this information is accurate? So the best way to know if it's accurate is to actually pick up the phone and call the program coordinator and ask them what the updated guidelines or what the updated criteria for selection are. So many times on their website they might have year of graduation, we prefer fresh graduates less than 3. And then you call them up and then they say, we don't have strict criteria, we're okay with taking anyone less than 7 years. So that is something that is very true, and this has happened to so many people. And sometimes they don't even have such criteria in real life. And then they say that if you have relevant U.S. clinical experience, sometimes we may overlook your year of graduation. So year of graduation by itself is not a very strict criteria. I don't think you should go about it, but it's to get the most accurate criteria and the most accurate cutoffs. It's always best to reach out to the program well in advance, meaning months in advance, not right now. Right now would be a busy season for them with new candidates coming in. But once the new batch is joined, maybe in late June to middle of July, that's the best time to reach out to programs and try to find out see if the program suits you or if your credentials suit that program. That includes year of graduation.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if Lalit is still on. I don't see his video. Lalit, are you still there?
I'm here. Yeah.
Okay, so let's take one last question because we are way over time now, which is about the scores as a filter. So let's say, some program has a step 1 recommended or, cutoff of 220, I'm 215 or 210. Should I really bother applying to this program, or if yes, then how do you make that kind of a decision?
So this is, again, I can give you a personal example of mine. So my program requires you to have 235 above scores on both steps, but I don't, meet the requirement or criteria for one of the scores. So this is totally based on having a well-rounded application. As George said about year of graduation, it's not just about if you are meeting the criteria, but at the same time you need to show a great interest in the program. But again, it depends on which program we are talking about too, because let's say if you are applying to a very competitive program, which is Ivy League or even a very good university program, then yes, it doesn't make sense to apply and getting a rejection from there. And I'm not saying you will, but again, so you have to be very mindful of which program you are choosing, especially when you apply. And as I said, it's not written on a hard rock and say we are not going to take we're not going to take because you don't meet out one of our requirements. But if you show a continuous interest and say that, hey, I'm really interested in your program because of so and so things, and if you keep going at it, I'm sure that you will you'll for sure make it, and it's not a important thing. But as I said, it depends on which program you're talking about. If it's a really competitive program, then I wouldn't personally suggest you to apply to those kind of programs. Yeah.
Thank you all. And so
I'm sorry. Can I add
just
one point?
Yes.
I actually forgot to add this. So I found that from my experience, most university programs, I mean, not the extremely competitive ones, maybe even the extremely competitive ones are relatively very forgiving on scores and year of graduation especially, because most, for example, in internal medicine, at least 17 to 20% of internal medicine international medical graduates have had either a master's degree, and then about 2% have a PhD. So then for them, a year of graduation is much higher. And in programs that take these candidates, like university programs, they tend to be much more forgiving in year of graduation. And specialties, like advanced specialties, they're also much more forgiving in year of graduation. That's something that I've noticed.
Yep. Thank you. All right, everyone. Thank you for your time. For more information, you can always look up our website right here. And of course, there is the YouTube channel where you can go and look up all the previous webinars. And for any other questions, go there and ask these questions, USMLE FAQs, we will get to them. And we'll probably have another webinar in coming days and months as we finish off the application and then the interview prep. So thank you, everyone, and thank you to the panel. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Pawan.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.